the Journal of Hospice and Palliative Nursing, 1 in every 20 children aged 15 or younger will suffer the loss of one or both of their parents. 1 in 5 will lose somebody close to them by 18. Not only that, but the Wall Street Journal says that mortality rates for adults in their 40s and 50s has risen over the past 2 decades. And 1.5 million children now reside in single-parent households due to the death of one parent. Sorry, I don't mean to overwhelm you with all those statistics. It kind of feels like wave after wave being thrown at you, right? Well, that's how I felt. April 28th, 2017, when my father unexpectedly passed away, and I became part of those statistics. I was 15, and he was just shy of 46. Like you, before I became part of those statistics, I was high and dry. But then the next thing I knew, I was sent tumbling off a cliff and into the raging waters below, consumed by this ocean of grief and suffering from the trauma of losing my father. Now, before I continue, I'm sure many of you are wondering, what is grief? If you haven't experienced it, it may be a foreign concept to you. And if you have, maybe you're still not quite sure exactly what grief means to you. Well, the textbook definition of grief is that it is a deep sorrow caused by the loss of a loved one. But grief is so much more than just an emotion. Grief is a complex thing with many faces. It can be physical, behavioral, it can even be cognitive. And grief doesn't have to be caused by the loss of a loved one. It can be from breaking up with your high school sweetheart. It can be a rejection from your dream college, and it can be the ending of a toxic friendship. Sorry. In my case, grief happened after the loss of my father, as I had mentioned earlier. It started off slowly, like the receding tide on a seemingly sunny day. And then it came all at once. 30-foot waves crashing down, taking the breath from my lungs, the sun from the sky, and the warmth from my body. There was no warning, no pause to prepare myself. It was one moment I was sitting on the shore, and the next I was 20,000 leagues under the sea. I was all alone there down at the bottom of the ocean with nothing around me. I couldn't reach out to anyone because my family was caught up in their own personal monsoons and my friends were miles inland enjoying the breeze wherever they were. There was no one to see the bubbles escaping from my throat, no one to see the tears mixed with the salt water to remind me what day it was or how much time had passed. I was all alone. It was just me, the dark, the water. Until denial came along. Denial with its light dancing above its brow. It gave me this false sense of security. Nothing had made sense up until that point. Nothing had made sense until denial lit up the dark, giving me this distorted sense of hope that all of this was just a nightmare. It was a nightmare that I would wake up from and I would be on the shore with my friends and my family and with my dad. Denial was meant to help me through the suffering, as if ignoring this tragedy that had befallen me would make it go away. And I believed it. I believed that it was all a dream until denial's light began flickering out and I was once again left alone at the bottom of the ocean. Then anger came, snapping its claws and latching on to wherever it met skin. It was nothing but excruciating pain. I was so convinced that all this suffering was caused by some higher power hell-bent on getting revenge for whatever wrongdoings I had committed, whatever sins I needed to be punished for. It was hot. I felt it in my head, in my heart, in my lungs. If I wasn't underwater, I'd practically be breathing fire. And just as quickly as anger came, bargaining took its place. The what-ifs ran through my head at 100 miles per minute. What if I had stayed home that day? What if I hadn't fought with him that morning? What if I was just a better daughter? What if? They just kept coming and coming as bargaining scales brushed against my skin, sending me through every memory, every flashback, every situation where I could have made a different decision, could have prevented my father's death, could have done something to avoid the tsunami that had dragged me to the bottom of the ocean. But eventually, bargaining left too, leaving me with my final visitor, depression. Depression with its massive tentacles encircling my body, squeezing me within an inch of my life, masking the pain with its so-called comforting hug. The fire that anger had ignited had been dampened, replaced with depression's ice. You know, I often thought about succumbing to these nasty beasts. It was so easy to just close my eyes and give in to this cycle of grief. This entire ordeal that I've been through over the past year and a half has felt a lot more like an eternity. There was no heroic savior of mine, no savior to pull me out of the water. There was no drastic decision of mine to suddenly turn my life around and pretend like I was strong enough to swim to the surface. There was no burst of energy to send me up there. It was just me learning how to let go of these creatures I thought were my friends. It was me learning how to shield my eyes from denial's false light, learning how to push away bargaining scales, removing anger's jaws even though it left scars. It was unraveling myself from depression's vice grip. It took a long time to learn how to do these things. My journey to the surface didn't happen all in one day. In fact, it's still happening now. Some days I can get my head above the water, and I can breathe, and I can feel the breeze, and I can hear my friends and family calling my name, but then the weather gets rough again, and I can feel depression curl around my ankle and yank me back down to where once again I am drowning. But over time, I've learned to swim. The ocean has taught me many things. Most importantly, it's taught me that I don't like living this way. I don't like living like this life of grief is all I have ever known. This agony, this pain, it's not what I want. I want to be able to leave these creatures behind and reach acceptance. That is what gives me the strength to swim. And for those of you who are going through similar situations, however rough your storm may be, however, if it's like a tsunami that has dragged you to the bottom of the ocean, or if it just happens to rock the boat a little, just know, in the words of a wise Disney character we all know and love, just keep swimming. You will reach the surface one day, and so will I. Thank you.